All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be doing a very special and unique and wildly different type of book review, and that is as we are reviewing Bowdrie and Bowdrie's Law by Louis L'Amour. These are short story compilations about the Texas Ranger Chick Bowdrie, or as I will refer to him throughout this video, Chick Bowdrie. And you will see why in a minute. Short stories. There's about 10 in each book. There's about 20 short stories. There's interesting historical notes at the end of each short story. Each short story is sort of a murder mystery slash mystery that the Chick Bowdrie, our Texas Ranger, has to suss out the suspects and shoot a bunch of people. And I will tell you, these are some of the most action-packed stories of Louis L'Amour. These are fast-paced, these are great. But I'm going to do something different with this review. I mean, I will tell you that the covers, because I do love covers, Gordon Crabb was the illustrator that did these covers. He's done a lot of the Louis L'Amour covers. He's done science fiction covers, fantasy covers. Just one of the better cover illustrators throughout the 80s and 90s. I said these books came out in 1984 and 85. However, each short story in these books was written in Louis L'Amour's early career in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So there's some of the first things he wrote, and some of the best, I believe. These stories are dope. This is where the review is going to take a different turn. And I'm doing this for a specific reason. As I was rereading these stories, these books have a special place in my heart because the first time I read them was when I was 19 and I was at a specific place and a specific time in my life. And as I was reading these books, I started to just think about that place and time in my life more than the stories. Like I was like, these stories hold so much weight to me, not because of the stories themselves, but just because the first time I read them, where I was. And we'll get to that in a second. The reason I wanted to do this review this way was because I was talking to my good friend Amber Baim about 10 years ago. Now, Amber Baim is an editor. She's a good writer herself, and she helped me edit parts of The Forgetting Moon. She's even actually in the acknowledgement page of The Forgetting Moon, is helping me edit this. But we were talking about our mutual love of Tad Williams, and I've got my Tad Williams books back here. And she was like, you know, every time I read or reread or even think about Tad Williams' Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series, she's like, it takes me back to when I was a college student at Bard University in New York. It takes me back there where I read the books on those cold winter nights in New York. And she's like, every time I think of Tad Williams or those books, I immediately go back there. And that is the same thing with me and these Chick Bowdrie books. Every time, I mean, when I started rereading these, I was immediately catapulted back in time to a period of my life that was very special to me when I first read these books. When was that, you ask? Well, let me tell you. It was back when I was 19 years old, as a Mormon missionary in Connecticut, Middletown, Connecticut, to be specific. I can even remember the apartments we lived in. There was 4 of us missionaries, so it was me and 3 other missionaries, Mormon missionaries. Now, let me explain Mormon missionaries for a minute. If you grow up Mormon, you know, or if you know anything about the Mormon church, at the age of 19, 20 to 21, most young men in the Mormon church go on a 2-year Mormon mission where they're sent someplace in the world to proselytize the Mormon church and convert people to the Mormon church. I did that from 19, 20 to 21. Some of the Mormon missionaries get sent to like Austria, some get sent to the Philippines, some get sent to Argentina, some get sent to California or Canada. Well, the church sent me to Connecticut and Rhode Island, which I loved, Connecticut and Rhode Island. That's why I'm wearing my Yukon shirt for this. So I spent 2 years in Connecticut and Rhode Island going around like the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormon missionaries go around and they knock on doors in every single neighborhood in the state and try to convert people to Mormonism. That's what we did, and that was a job 6 days a week for us. Now, the four of us missionaries that lived in this apartment, for some reason, someone had left a missionary prior, or somebody had left copies of these two books. And so at night, we would, after a long day of proselytizing, we would come back to our apartment and we would read. One of us would read out loud one of the short stories, and we would just sit around and listen to it, and we would enjoy it. And it would really catapult us. It took us back. What it was is we were four young men from Utah, from the desert Southwest, living in Connecticut. Connecticut and the desert Southwest are nothing alike. There's a lot of differences. And we missed our home in the desert Southwest, reading these westerns about Chick Bowdrie. Reading these westerns about Chick Bowdrie gunslinging his way through the Old West really took us back to Utah, where it took us home. Every night it would take us home. And we went to the library one night and we found that all the Chick Bowdrie stories were on tape. We checked out the books on tape. And so then we stopped reading them to each other and we just listened to the books on tape, which was way better. The narrator was awesome, and he talked in this old Western voice, and, Chick Bowdrie rode up onto the scoundrels that had robbed the train, and Chick Bowdrie. That's the way it went. And we delighted in that guy's voice. In fact, we started, after weeks of listening to these stories told by this narrator, we started talking that way ourselves. We'd just walk around town just like, and here we are, Mormon missionaries out preaching the gospel to the people of Connecticut. In fact, we were just goofy. And we would we would knock on a door and I would say, hey, I'm Elder Durfee, a representative of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And this is my friend. And he would go, and I'm Chick Bowdrie, Texas Ranger. And then I'd be like, and we're here to talk to you about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. People would look at us like we're stupid, and then we'd redo it. Like he'd play the straight guy, then I'd be like, at the next door, he'd be like, and I'm Elder Johnson from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'd be like, and I'm Chick Bowdrie, Texas Ranger. And we're here to talk to you about Jesus. People would look at us like we're out of our fucking skull. Which, we were. It's just stupid and goofy. But we were 19-year-old kids on a Mormon mission. If the church is going to send out kids for not pay us anything, it's just a voluntary mission. If they're going to, you get what you pay for, church. Mormon church, you get what you pay for. We might not have been the bestest representation of Mormonism with our whole Chick Bowdrie, Texas Ranger door approach. But we were having fun. And the people of Connecticut thought we were out of our minds. It was ridiculous. I can't even believe we did that. But what can you do? What can you do? Anyway, so rereading these stories now, though I was enjoying these stories, I was enjoying more so reliving my life as a Mormon missionary in Middletown, Connecticut, where all of this took place, with those three other Mormon missionaries, and our mutual love for the Chick Bowdrie stories that we would tell each other every night or listen to on tape, and then go out into the world and talk to the world like we were Chick Bowdrie. So anyway, I wanted to do a little bit of a different type of a review this time, where I talk about the nostalgia of books and how literature, much like music, the first time you hear a song, and then you hear it again 20 years later, it takes you right back to that place where you first heard it. The first time you watched a movie, then you see it again, and it takes you right back to that same theater with the same people that you were with. Books are the same. Literature does the same thing. And these books, when I think of these books and I reread these books, it took me right back to Middletown, Connecticut, and the goofiness of us missionaries. And that is the first part of the review. Now, in the comments, if you've read any books or if you've got some books that are special to you in the same way that I'm mentioning these books, please put it in the comments, do a little story, let us know. Those will be fun to read because, you know, these took me back to Connecticut. Maybe there's some books that take you to Connecticut on my mission. 19 years old. And I still have a huge fondness for these books just because of that. And Chick Bowdrie. Now let me just tell you what the book's are about. I'm just going to read the backs of these books because these are good. And like I mentioned, there's historical note. There's a short story with a historical note after each short story. And one of the things I realized as I read these historical notes was the character Johnny Ringo. There's a story about Johnny Ringo in these books. And the character Johnny Ringo from Tombstone was actually based off of a real gunslinger in the West. I did not know that. I thought it was just a made-up gunslinger for Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday to fight. But he's actually based off of a real guy, and I found that out just today in the historical note. So let's go ahead and talk about Chick Bowdrie and what these books are about. And like I said, I've done some short story compilation reviews before where I mention a brief sentence or two about each short story in the book. We're going to skip that today. We're just going to read the backs of these books because these are some of the best back jacket copy I've ever read. Okay, so let me get into it. The name is Bowdrie. Chick Bowdrie. It was a name that caused the most hardened gunmen to break out in cold sweat. Chick Bowdrie. He could have ridden the outlaw trail, but the Texas Rangers recruited him because they didn't want to have to fight against him. Pursuing the most wanted men in the Southwest, Chick Bowdrie knew all too well the dusty trails, the bitter cattle feuds, the desperate killers, and the quiet, weather-beaten, wind-blasted towns that could explode into action with the wrong word. He had sworn to carry out the law, but there were times when he had to apply justice with his fists and his guns. Lawman, manhunter, peacemaker. It takes a hard breed of man to survive as a Texas Ranger. But Chick Bowdrie stands head and shoulders above the rest. The rough trails are his home, from the big thicket to the Pecos to the border. He's dried by the desert sun and wind, seared and toughened by uncounted gun battles. And when you look into his black eyes, it's like looking down the barrels of his 244 Magnums with their hammers drawn back. He rides in the name of justice, but he lives by his own law, Bowdrie's Law. And if you're thinking about walking on the wrong side of Bowdrie's Law, you'd better start running fast. Anyway, I love the back jacket of both of those. Sometimes they get it right on the back descriptions, and that's great. I give Bowdrie, and Bowdrie's Law 10 out of 10. Not just because these are probably the two most action-packed books in Louis L'Amour's stable of hundreds of books, which I have over here. I'll show you my entire Louis L'Amour collection. It is right there. About 100 different Western novels. Anyway, these are two of the most action-packed, and I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 stars, not just for that, but for the nostalgia and the memories they brought back as I reread these stories. Took me right back to my Mormon mission in Connecticut. And let me just end this video by saying this. Yes, I was a Mormon missionary in Connecticut and Rhode Island. I probably knocked on every single door in the states of Connecticut and Rhode Island trying to proselytize Mormonism to the good citizens of Connecticut and Rhode Island. And, you know, I was younger. I did it because I was younger. I mean, I would not do that now, and I probably should just apologize to every citizen in the state of Connecticut and Rhode Island for interrupting their dinner with my... Hello, I am Elder Durfee of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and this is my friend, Chick Bowdrie, Texas Ranger. And we're here to teach you about Mormonism. Yeah, I apologize for that. Apologize.